Hello everyone, Chris Guthrie here, host of SellerCast, and in today's episode I speak with Daniel, who's been selling on Amazon since 2012. He switched to private labeling in 2013, and because he's been selling on Amazon for so long, he has a unique perspective in terms of what he's been doing to try and further defend his business against competitors, and also he shared some of the mistakes along the way because he's been selling for so long. So you're going to enjoy today's episode. Let's start the recording and get it going. Hello everyone, Chris Guthrie here, and today I have Daniel with me. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks.
Daniel, so let's get into it. I know that you've been selling on Amazon for actually a lot longer time period than most of the people we've spoken to. And so I'm sure that might be an interesting part of the show that we can focus on. But so let's start with that first. How long have you been selling on Amazon for?
I started selling in late summer 2012.
Yes. So summer 2012, if I recall back to just the various courses that are all out there, some people like courses, some people hate them. That's irrelevant here. But that largely precedes most of the courses that I'm aware of that were out at the time talking about selling on Amazon. So did you learn from a course, or did you just kind of teach yourself this?
I feel like I'm self-taught. I did pick up a couple, an Amazon course after I'd been selling for about 6 months just to see what else I could learn. But mostly self-taught. I got the idea from some people who had done it before and written about it on blogs, but that was retail arbitrage. And so since then, I moved on, and what I've learned after retail arbitrage has mostly been self-taught and talking with friends and stuff like that.
That's awesome. So you basically saw that people were selling regularly branded products, so different types of things for retail arbitrage. Then you thought, hey, well, maybe it'd be even better if I had my own brand.
Yeah, eventually.
So then what did you so I guess it sounds like you started a little bit with retail arbitrage just to get your feet wet, and then you started doing your own brand?
Right, yeah. You want me to start sort of at the beginning?
Sure,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it'll be somewhat interesting, and then we can kind of get up more to the current time and talk about what you've been doing to grow your business. But yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I didn't start out with this kind of business in mind. I actually went to technical school for computer network systems and ended up working for Altel, the wireless company. And eventually I got laid off. So I was still working at Altel when I was driving to Illinois. I did retail support for retail stores, doing the computer and network support. And I was driving to Illinois. I think it was like west of Dayton, Ohio, somewhere on I-70. And I was listening to Pat Flynn's podcast, the Smart Passive Income podcast. And that was episode 10, and you were on there. So,
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, so that was the first time I'd heard anybody with big success doing Amazon affiliate marketing with niche sites. And so it was intriguing. And I thought, this is kind of great. I can do this kind of thing. I had read The 4-Hour Work Week earlier that year. I had read Chris Guillebeau's The Art of Nonconformity. So I was interested in making money online, kind of location independent business and that sort of thing. And so I was just trying to figure out what I could do. So I ended up learning about WordPress. I learned about AdSense, SEO, and that sort of thing. And in 2012 or 2011, actually, I was basically copying everything I saw that Spencer Hawes did. So I would just read his blog, and I tried to do the same thing after I was laid off from my job. And we lived in Panama at the time. Cost of living was cheap. It was a nice place to live while I worked on niche sites. So that's pretty much what I did all day. But
Okay.
The Google's Penguin update hit right when I felt like I was getting some success with the niche sites. So that pretty much wiped out my traffic, and I wasn't really excited about working to build that back up. And so I started looking for something else. And that's when I found the Amazon stuff.
That's great. Yeah. So, Spencer Hawes was on the podcast back in episode 13. So sellercast.com/13 if you want to listen to his episode. And I was on Pat's podcast years ago, and I think then again later, a few years after that. But yeah, I'd known him for quite a while, and so it's fun. I've actually still get some random people every now and then saying, hey, that I heard you on that podcast. My cousin actually called me up one time and said, hey, I heard you on that. But his podcast is obviously really popular. But so that's great. So you basically stumbled upon, a few people that you started to learn from, and then you started to take these things and then work towards doing it. So your story is somewhat parallels one of our other episodes, episode 27, so sellercast.com/27, with Susan, where she talked about her background building niche type sites and making money from AdSense, et cetera. And then again, same thing. It was a Google update that kind of prompted a change in a business model. So let's kind of get up to the current time. So are you currently using any of those past skills to help with your e-commerce business? Are you doing things like, you have your own website, authority site in a specific niche and you're driving traffic to that, to your Amazon listings in some way, or building an email list or anything like that? Or where are you at on that side?
The experience with the niche sites, I feel like what it helped with most that I use today is with research, keyword research, kind of the SEO sort of analysis when it comes to Amazon stuff. And so
Mhm.
I haven't really used outside traffic. I have a website that I also have my products on, a website for my brand, but it doesn't get much traffic and I don't really have anything coming from outside of Amazon. So all my experience with the niche sites, that has mostly helped as far as keyword research and that sort of thing when it comes to the Amazon business.
Okay, cool. And so yeah, it's a little bit different than what Susan was doing. She was had some sites that she was using to drive traffic as well. So let's talk about the actual business then. So are you able to share, the number of products that you're currently selling, a rough range, and along with what you're doing sales wise?
Yeah, I have right now I have four products and I'll have a fifth soon. It's in production. And as far as sales, revenue numbers right now, first 2 months of this year have been just over 50,000 in revenue. So, and I know for new people, you kind of wonder what that looks like in terms of profit. And for me, anyway, after Amazon fees, after advertising stuff, but not after other, regular business expenses, that's something like 19,000 a month as far as
Awesome.
profit. So
And so how long have you been at that level for then? Is it something where you kind of built up those products and you started going along and doing pretty well, and then you thought, hey, this is awesome?
it's really gone up and down. I mean, especially if you go back to 2012, it's been the steadiest since I started doing private label, I guess. And so, last year, November, December, are huge. So they were better than I'm doing in January and February. But
Mhm.
I would say since I'd have to look, I've been pretty stable for about 10 months now. Yeah.
Okay. And so did you notice, and so it sounds like then it maybe all the different competitors kind of coming into the space just in general with everyone talking about private labeling hasn't had too much of an impact, or is it certainly looked at, or has it had an impact in terms of what you're looking at, at doing moving forward?
It has had some impact. I think my numbers would be a lot bigger. At least they would have been last summer. Like one of my products, I had ordered it, and then it seemed like while I was waiting for production, I saw other similar products coming online. And by the time I had it in stock, there were, five competitors or something like that. Some of my other products haven't been like that. And maybe that's because of better sourcing or something like that. But I mean, I'm pleased with what's happened so far. I suppose it probably could have been higher with less competition, but so far so good.
Okay. Yeah. And so, I mean, so in that case, who knows? It could have been like a product that someone recommended in a course or something, or, there's so many out now. But
Exactly.
uh, yeah. So then, okay. So then what are you primarily focused on now? I mean, having 10 months of stability is great. Having that. I think that I talked to a lot of sellers that they're kind of going up and down, or they're, trying to make it so that overall they're going up. But then that always is kind of a bit of a challenge as well. What are your things that you're focusing on right now? Are you just mainly working on launching new products? Or are you trying to find products that you can have a better moat around, where it's more difficult for competitors to come in and compete?
Yeah, ideally I would like to have products that are harder to compete with. Right now, I guess my main focus is adding more products, and fortunately, that can be pretty easy since I have a couple suppliers that I already sell products that they manufacture, and so I can just add more from them. It makes the whole process a little simpler. In the future, I'd like to have more unique things that are harder to compete with. But I think right now the best thing to do is just to focus on getting more out there to get more cash flowing in.
Nice. So the first focus might be just to work with your initial suppliers, since it's easier from a sourcing standpoint to get those products going, and then maybe you'll look towards those more unique products in the future.
Yeah, I know we might talk about some mistakes that I made later on, and so
Yeah, we'll go ahead,
okay.
and that's fine. I mean, we can do whatever. So that's, yeah, if you want to get into those now, it's perfect.
Yeah, so one of my mistakes when we're talking about unique products, one of my mistakes was trying to go custom and unique too soon. So this was in 2014. I was still doing, see, I was just starting the private label. So mostly I just imported from China and bought wholesale and sold. And so I started to make a custom product, and I thought this was going to be great. And it was kind of an interesting process, but ultimately I think it was too early. And the process of making custom products takes so long that I don't think it's a good thing to start with when you are early and when you don't have a lot of time and a lot of cash, and especially when you're living off of your earnings, which is what I've been doing since the beginning. If you have another job and you're doing Amazon on the side, then maybe that makes sense once you have one or two products to do a custom product. But unless you have other things that are going and doing well, I wouldn't go custom too soon.
That makes sense. Just the additional costs as well that are associated with that. Is there anything else that you've done along the way that you would say, okay, well, that was that was a mistake, or maybe we can even, and if there aren't a lot of mistakes, yeah, that's great. But we can maybe focus then on what you've been doing to try and grow your business as well.
Oh yeah, I basically have a list of mistakes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, then that's the thing is that you've been selling for so long, especially compared to even a lot of our guests that have been on the show. And so even if it was just like it sounds bad because, obviously you've been successful for quite some time, but as a way to serve a word of warning to others, it's also a benefit for them to hear that as well.
Yeah, yeah, sure. It might be the most helpful part of what we talk about is my mistakes. So I was too slow to private label. Like I said, I started with retail arbitrage, and that was an excellent place to start. It's a great way to get started with Amazon, but I was too focused on that for too long. And then I moved to wholesale, and I also imported from China, but I still sold as if I was a wholesaler.
To just interject real
Sure.
quick, when did those dates occur, just so we can have some context?
I actually started buying wholesale very quickly. So summer 2012, I started the retail arbitrage, and then in 2013, in the spring, I I believe I received my first shipment from China, and I started buying wholesale at the same time. So I was doing kind of all three at once, or all two at once.
Okay, so spring
Yeah.
2013, private label and wholesale, and then I'm assuming that the wholesale just didn't do as well as private label, and that's why you're only doing that right now.
Yeah, wholesale did amazing in 2013, but basically everybody else could get the same product, and I didn't own the listing, so to speak. So
Yeah,
it was that was up and down.
yeah, and I mean that's even hearing you say that just you didn't start too soon. I think a lot of people would be like, well, shoot, I guess that when it comes down to really indie business that someone gets going and it starts to have some success, someone's like the when should you have started it? Well, yesterday or
Yeah,
the day before
exactly.
that. But so what else along the way have you learned from the mistakes?
Well, let's see. Probably one of the biggest ones is also I took too long to understand how to launch a new listing, how to get the influx of sales that gets the jump started, how to gather reviews and that sort of thing. I knew some of the details as early as 2013, I think, but early 2013, but I just didn't. I wasn't aggressive with it. So I launched a listing with my first private label effort at some point. I'm trying to remember when that was, and I got a couple reviews, and so that just isn't enough to do it. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize that at the time. I run out of products. I let my stock run out, and didn't realize how bad that was for listings after I started a private label.
So just for those that are might not be aware, everyone always hears that you should try and keep your product in stock. What happened in your case? Did you basically lose all of your existing sales, and then it was hard to rebuild them back up after that time because you were out for too long, or
Right,
what happened with that case?
right. at the time when I should have reordered my product, this was in 2014. It just wasn't a convenient time because the manufacturing time for the product was long, and then I would have received it right at slow season. So I held off on buying anymore, and so I ran out. And so I was out for probably 2 or 3 months, which is super long. And then when you get back in stock, even though it's your listing, you're doing private label, nobody else is on it, you're back in stock. You still have, a couple hundred reviews or whatever, but for some reason, Amazon just doesn't give it the weight that it used to. So when people search for the product, you don't get the same results and you don't get the same sales as before, at least in my experience.
Yeah. And actually, I want to go back to the previous thing that you mentioned too about just not having enough reviews when you first launched your product and how that was a mistake. Now, obviously, you know that you need to have more reviews when you launch. But I think what's interesting is, especially in all the various Facebook groups, because it's so easy to spread misinformation, people hear about an Amazon terms of service update and, or they sneeze basically. And then everyone's like, whoa, I don't know what to do right now. I'm freaking out.
Right.
I mean, what is your attitude to some of these changes? I suppose it depends on the change that actually comes out. But I mean, is your attitude always that you're going to lean more towards being a little more aggressive in trying to grow your business after you've seen, both sides of it? Or are you also a little bit more cautious?
I tend to be cautious, but in this, I kind of think that there's no need to change anything that's working unless we see solid evidence that we need to do that. So basically, it's easy to overreact, but I don't think there's really any reason to change or adapt until we absolutely have to. So right now, it seems like we can go on with some of the methods that you use probably and that I've been using to get reviews, to get sales, like sales rank boost and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that a lot of people, maybe this is their first business they've had some success with. But I've said this before in past episodes, I draw parallels, and you probably can relate to as well, obviously, since you were based on Google before. But you can kind of draw these parallels between what's happened with Google and what may happen in some time in the future with Amazon. In any business, you're going to need to be able to adapt. But Google made various changes to their algorithm, and then people had to change the way that they were building links, for example, to try and rank their websites. And so the very same thing could occur on Amazon, where the way that they, for example, rank products could be impacted. And then the various metrics that influence those rankings could be changed as well. And so it's not to really scare anyone that's listening. It's more for you to think about what's the long term, where is Amazon heading towards? And then just being ready that when there are changes, because there will be, to be able to adapt to those.
Yeah. And you'll have to tell me your thoughts. Do you think we're in a better position as far as Amazon algorithm updates than we were or are with Google? Because with Google, it's not like if my website is ranking, number 3 on page 1, it's not like I'm necessarily making Google money directly. But with Amazon, what did they say? 53% of sales are from third-party sellers. So we're making them money. So do you think that we're in a better position with Amazon as far as algorithm changes or review changes or whatever versus with Google?
I think with the information that I know now, and that's just basically what anyone else has access to, I think we're probably in a better position. But it's, time will tell. Mm-hmm. But it just seems like for now, it's still a very symbiotic relationship between third-party sellers and the Amazon ecosystem as a whole, and that they like us because we make them more money. And certainly too that some of the algorithm changes, what they're most likely going to do is just change the way in which some people may be abusing the system rather than doing anything else. That's always what Google seems to do. And then of course there are casualties that may have been innocent or not, and that's somewhat of the challenge, I guess, when you're relying on external platforms. But again, if we come back to the reasons why a lot of people like to sell on Amazon, it just has to do with the fact that there's so much traffic there and so many buyers. People go to Amazon to buy, people go to Google to search for information. But so I guess I don't really have any better answer than that, and maybe people have different opinions. I just think that in general, looking at knowing that stuff will change in the future is important so that you can be ready to adapt when that comes. And you just need to be able to embrace the change that inevitably will come on anything that you're doing online.
Yeah. So I agree.
But yeah, so anyways, that's a little bit. What else then have you kind of learned along the way? And I guess we're fairly far into this conversation here, but anything else that you think that you've made mistakes along the way that people don't commonly think of when they get started with this business, or if they're further along, that's fine too.
Yeah, sure. I have some more.
Well, maybe this will just be the mistake episode, and then you can come back to talk about all the successes.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that later. So this isn't a fatal mistake, but one thing that I did was I took too long to stop handling shipments myself. Now things are more streamlined and take less time because I have my private label stuff labeled in China, and it's actually labeled for FBA over there, and it just gets shipped air straight to Amazon warehouses. And there's one product that I still do ocean freight on because it's fairly slow selling product, but it's easy to keep in stock. So I do ocean freight on that, and my freight forwarder will just put the UPS labels on and send it off to Amazon for me. So that has made things simpler. I didn't really mind handling the shipments just because it was all uniform and bulk. But just because you don't mind doing something doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't find a better way to do it. And so I could have done that sooner, and it would have freed up time.
So you were in the beginning, you were doing, you were dealing with customs, or you're dealing with the setting up or rather using maybe your supplier's DHL account and handling those shipments and kind of walking them through that process. And then afterwards, you switch over to a freight forwarder who handled all that for you.
Not quite. I used a freight forwarder from the beginning, but I would have the shipments, they would come by semi to a storage building that my dad had, and I would actually go out there and label each item
Gotcha.
and ship them
Okay.
off to Amazon in bulk myself.
Oh dang, yeah, yeah, that's rough. That makes sense. And I mean, when I talk to especially new sellers, usually they get at least their first shipment sent to their house because they just kind of want to see the product. I think it's just that maybe that some of that's just the excitement boiling over.
Part of it's fear too, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe a healthy dose of both. But yeah, so okay, so that's what you did as well.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to keep prodding you, but yeah, if there's anything else that you think people could learn from, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that's most of it. The only other thing
Okay.
is a small thing. This is any business person could run into this, and I just didn't prepare for the big tax bill after my first year. So like I should have been ready for that. And so if you want to be ready to put money back into your business, it helps to realize what's coming.
Yeah. So, would you suggest if you're doing it over again to get in line with the tax professional that specializes in physical products sales, or just in general having someone on your team would be helpful?
Just in general, I mean, I had a tax preparer, or I still have, but I didn't. The difference between my 2012 and 2013 was pretty big, and so I didn't do the estimated payments, and so then when the tax time came, I owed
Yeah.
everything all at once. So
Yeah.
just understanding how that works when you're new to being self-employed and making a decent profit is helpful.
Yeah, yeah. You don't get your taxes taken out where you're self-employed until well, I guess if that first year, because then they look at what you've done and then they decide if you need to do estimated tax payments, whether it's quarterly, monthly, et cetera, based on your volume. So, yeah, that's a good point. Especially if you're new, just be prepared for the tax bill.
Yep.
You haven't stumbled upon some sweet loophole where you don't have to pay taxes.
Yeah, there is that one for specifically for Amazon private label sellers who have gone to China, that they have the tax is only 1%. So yeah, that's one we try to keep secret, but no, I'm just joking.
So okay, so let's switch gears here. We're actually coming up near the end of our time here, but I want to focus on some of the biggest wins you've had in your business, and then how you'd suggest others implement those as well. I mean, I suppose some of these have been mistakes and how you've turned around these mistakes, but anything else that you've done that's been okay, this was really good for me, and I think that others will benefit from it as well.
The biggest win has probably been, it's not a specific thing exactly. It's been basically talking with my friend who actually you met in Las Vegas, and figuring out the way the Amazon selling game, so to speak, works. So when I started, I kind of was on my own, and I didn't have anybody else that I knew that was doing the same thing. So it was all everything that I learned was just going on in my head. So it helps to have somebody else who's doing the same thing, who you can talk to, who you can also share your products with, and somebody that you can trust to talk about this stuff. And getting a different perspective helps to learn faster. And so once we were talking about this kind of stuff actively, we kind of like to say we reverse engineered the ASM course just by looking at successful Amazon listings and trying to figure out what they were doing. Like, how is this guy selling thousands and thousands of dollars worth of this product? And so once you figure out those little strategies that lead to a successful product, then it's easy to apply that to one product and another product and another product. So that's been the biggest win, is I guess having somebody else to talk to and figuring out reverse engineering successful Amazon listings.
So that's a good point. I think that having those relationships with other people that are doing something similar to you, and this especially goes to people that are newer, just getting started out, is really important because it's so easy to feel alone when you're building a business by yourself. Because especially if you're still working a day job, because you want to try and you save as much money or reinvest as much money as possible, but you just can't talk to anyone because it's no one can really relate to it. They're talking about the latest TV shows they watched, and you're up looking at products on Amazon trying to figure out what people are doing, and talking to your suppliers in the evening if you're in the U.S. because they're it's a perfect time to talk to China. And so that's a bit of a challenge. So then I guess the question is, how did you meet your friend? Were you friends before in the past, or what would you suggest to others that you don't have that relationship and that should try and develop those?
Yeah, my experience doesn't really have anything to offer for other people, because we just met. I was working out at the park, and we just met at the local park. So it just turned out we were both interested in business stuff and making money, but not having to work a 9 to 5, that sort of thing. So I don't really know what to say for other folks. The first thing that comes to mind is I'm at my brother's co-working space right now, and if you have a co-working space in your area, if you have time to go and hang out there and do whatever work that you can do there, you'll probably meet other people who are interested in similar things, and you might be able to develop relationships that would be beneficial to both of you.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I think that now too there are lots of Facebook groups, but even still, it's tough. It's more difficult to make those relationships in that way. When I've gone to events, just kind of sharing personal experiences, that's where I've really been able to make longer lasting friendships, and just being around other people that do similar things in general is really helpful. But if that's cost prohibitive, usually you can also look on meetup.com to see if there's various Amazon groups. I know there's some groups on there. I actually went to the San Diego group back in February, I believe. Yeah, February. So shout out to the San Diego folks if any of them are listening. But it was good because that's the type of stuff that's really a good balance. If you're so used to just building an internet-based business, it's easy to not have those human connections, and especially for the benefit of being able to bounce ideas off each other and be more open with what you're doing in your business is really valuable. So that's great. So then, what else would you add in terms of, and you talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but in terms of what you're trying to do in the long run? I know you talked about some more unique products. Is there anything else I'm trying to think of that you think that is really, really important for you to do in 2016 to be able to grow your business?
In 2016,
And if it comes back to just the things you mentioned before, like trying to do more unique products, more challenging products for competitors to try and that can't source, and that's fine too.
yeah, I think the best thing for me for 2016 is just sourcing new products, and I sourced on Alibaba initially, and that worked out well. I kind of landed with a good supplier, but I've also had some bad experiences on Alibaba. I got a trading company in one case, and it could have been worse. I basically the guy just disappeared on me, and when I went to reorder, I couldn't reorder my product, so I don't carry that product anymore. But for adding new products, I'm focusing on trying to source products that aren't on Alibaba. So if I can go to a trade show in Hong Kong or a trade show in China, I've done both of those, and I plan on doing that more in the future, just to be able to get a better look at the product, to pick quality products faster, and to hopefully build better relationships with suppliers and find things that aren't on Alibaba that everybody's going to be trying to sell on Amazon in the next few months or whatever.
That's a great tip. And I think that makes sense too. Going for anything you can do to diversify and differentiate yourself makes sense in terms of where you're sourcing. So going back to that trading company, is the only way you know that example, you knew that it was a trading company was basically after the guy disappeared, or did you know something up before then?
I believe I suspected it was a trading company after I got one of my orders, because it seemed to be manufactured by a company with a different name. And so I think he was being the middleman, which was fine with me until he disappeared.
Yeah, I suppose, on Alibaba, that is a potential that you run into someone where they're just, they're making some money in the middle and then finding you stuff. But if they help you do that and you're still able to make good margins, then that's not the end of the world. But yeah, if they run away, then that's certainly a problem. So do you think that's just kind of a symptom of sourcing on Alibaba, and the only way around is to try and do some of what you've done once you're a larger business, and to try and just actually go to Hong Kong, for example, or go to China, do different trade shows?
Yeah, I think it's really easy for middlemen to set up on Alibaba. So yeah, if you can go to China, even if you don't go to the factory and you just go to the Canton Fair or to another trade show, there's the Housewares show in Hong Kong. You can get an idea at the shows whether a booth is a trading company or a supplier, manufacturer. In many cases, the trading companies tend to have just anything and everything. But if they're really focused on one product, a lot of times they'll be a supplier.
That's nice. That's a good counterintuitive tip. People think, oh, it's great. They sell a lot of things. I can come back to them for a lot of items.
Right.
But yeah, if they're, doing soccer balls and lamps, right. Just a couple random things, then yeah, that's a good indicator. That's good. It's a good tip. Well, great. I think that brings us close to our end here. Thank you again so much for coming on to talk about your experiences. I think that it's kind of cool that you started so long ago and then, went through retail arbitrage, wholesaling, and then kind of morphed into private labeling once you found that. And then also to that tip on just that relationship with your friend helping you out. And you guys just kind of meeting randomly. So that's cool too, that it wasn't some, lifelong friend and you guys have been working together in other businesses. But that's great. And I think that it just in general, people getting out of their comfort zone. So if you haven't gone to a meetup group, maybe that's something that you could put on your list to go and do. And there's going to be groups around in your area that you could potentially do that at. So, well, thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on and sharing your experiences.
Sure thing.
Have a great rest of your day.
All right.
All right, and that was the episode with Daniel. Hopefully enjoyed the conversation that he and I had. I think the fact that he's been selling on Amazon for so long really brought a unique perspective to the episode that we haven't really had in the past, because most of the sellers that have been on here just quite simply haven't been selling as long. And so it's been a lot of fun talking to Daniel for this episode. The other thing too is that this is our 30th episode now. If you've been enjoying the show, you can go to sellercast.com/iTunes to leave us a review, or if you're listening on Android, you can also leave a review for any of the other listening apps that you may be using. And also too, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate the feedback that we've been getting. We're getting more and more people listening to the show, and it's just overall been a lot of fun doing this show. And I thank you so much for tuning in each time we do these episodes. So we'll see you in the next one, and thank you again so much for your support so far.